For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss constitutionalism and the quality of democracy. Are we immune to fascism? Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you.
Why do you say that in rebuilding democratic life, it's important that we restore the rule of law?
Well, you know, the rule of law under apartheid was a law that humiliated black people, especially Africans, which removed people from their homes, put them far away from their work, which gave inferior education to black people, and so forth and so on. The rule of law today, the rule of law has got a specialized meaning as well, but I'm just referring to legality mainly. Legality today is the rights that people have, the dignity that people have, and also under the Constitution, the obligation of the state to meet basic needs. So it's very important to restore that after the 10 years of Zuma's presence, which led to various irregularities, disrespect for the law, and a lot of corruption. So legality is very important.
You've touched specifically the state-owned entities as well as other state entities. Why do you think that?
Well, you know, Eskom, Transnet, Denel, all of these entities, as well as sections of the state, were used to give tenders that were irregular, and in particular to benefit the Guptas. And it sounds like something like R1 trillion rands were pillaged in this way. And the state-owned entities are receiving a lot of attention from Minister Gordhan, who's Minister of Public Enterprises, and new boards have been put in place, but it's going to take a long time. Also, the prosecuting authorities, the police authorities, are in disarray, so that prosecution and dealing with them is not actually being implemented as quickly as it should be, or as efficiently as it should be.
You are also saying that in our country now, it looks like something quite different from what we used to see in the 1980s and that entire period. Can you tell us why do you think?
The law of apartheid was a law that denied people dignity. Since 1996, we've had a constitution which enhances the well-being of human beings. So my duty, I thought, in the 1980s and earlier, was to undermine the law of apartheid and not obey the law of apartheid. Now I believe I have a duty to abide by the law of this constitution, because it is a legitimate constitution. So it was illegitimate law in those days, and it was a law that was violent against the majority.
We've recently had the medium-term budget speech where the new finance minister, Dhlamini, spoke about helping the state-owned entities, especially the SAA, with more money, and we know that some political parties, especially the opposition parties, are not happy with that. What is your take on the fact that SAA keeps on receiving this bailout?
Well, it's not really what I focused on in that paper at all, but I don't think Dhlamini is completely in favor of bailing out SAA. I think it's a big subject. Some people, like Carol Payton yesterday, said it may be cheaper to let SAA go and liquidate it than it will be to continue bailing it out, and it's not run efficiently, things like this. Whereas Gordhan says that it's had bad management and things like this and can come right. But that's not my concern in that paper at all. I've not been. I was not dealing with the budgetary aspects.
You are also touching on the Zuma era, where you said that Zuma's period had its own flaws, but it is important for the contribution that it does not represent all the potentialities of the understandings and practices of democracy. Why do you think Zuma's era must not be isolated when you look at these issues?
No, I didn't say Zuma's era mustn't be isolated. I said that we mustn't think that if we go back to before Zuma, that all the potentialities of democracy are embodied in what was happening before 2009 or 2007. Because what I was discussing in the article is the meaning of democracy. And the meaning of democracy is not just voting. And in the 1980s, you had popular power. So what I'm saying is we mustn't think just getting rid of Zuma means we've realized every democratic possibility. Because democracy is something that should be growing and enriching all the time.
You also say that what can happen in a democratic life does not derive only from what is in a constitution or through being able to exercise the vote. What do you mean about that?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that voting is one form of exercising democracy. It's not the original meaning of the word democracy. The original meaning of the word democracy was direct rule by the people. Now, so what I was saying is a constitution defines certain things that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, like you can vote. But outside of that, wherever you stay, you can form street committees, say, to control crime, or community policing forums which are not initiated by the state. So there are a lot of these things which don't depend on the state. They're not necessarily antagonistic to the state, but in the 1980s they were antagonistic. Today it could be that these popular, if we set up more organs of popular power, they could help the state to do certain things, but they may also be completely independent.
You also say that what we have in our country does not exhaust the meaning of the word democracy, nor do our practices to conform with the original definition of democracy advanced by Aristotle. Can you also?
No, but that was what I was saying now, is that the original meaning of democracy was direct democracy. And representative democracy, having the vote, came much later. So that by focusing now just on representative democracy, we are ignoring the original meaning and the possibilities of employing that in the current period. That was what I was saying.
So why do you think it's important to raise the question of fascism?
Well, you know, I referred to populism in the other interview, that there's a rise of authoritarian populism, Donald Trump and so forth, but there are also situations in the world which are referred to as fascists. For example, in the Philippines, this chap Duterte, he has come out on what he calls a drug war, and he just gets people killed outside of the judicial system. They just mowed it down. You've got the situation in India with Modi, and you've got the situation where in Brazil this week, Bolsonaro was elected, and he is a fascist, a supporter of torture, homophobic, a whole lot of other things. Now, why I raised it in relation to South Africa is that fascism tends to emerge in situations where people are disillusioned with liberal politics or left politics. And India and Brazil are very important, because in the case of India, the rise of an authoritarian populist or fascist movement under Modi is partly a reaction to the delegitimization of the Indian Congress, which was in a similar position to the ANC. So that's one lesson. Secondly, the Brazilian situation, you had a very popular left movement, the PT, Party of Labour, and they got people, some people say they loved the PT, but they got disillusioned with politics in general, but also what they expected of the PT, they didn't deliver. Now, the lessons for us is that we cannot exclude the possibility that if people get more and more disillusioned and cynical about the type of politics that they're seeing around us, not just people say the EFF is fascist, but not just statements of the EFF, but also some tendencies in the ANC have that potentiality. I'm not saying it will be realized, but we have to be careful. And I related this to popular power, that the surest way of preventing the rise of fascism is to have the people of the country invested in democracy. And they invest best in democracy when they are active in politics. And we've got to resurrect that popular involvement.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about constitutionalism and the quality of democracy. Are we immune to fascism?